people are making fun of this low-end gala, this new Australian dumb thing that they're doing. The retreat is already sparking lots of social media mockery. Let's look at the place in hand. I'm gonna reload this one. Here it is.
This morning, God, the hotel is so beautiful. The Intercontinental Coogee. It's
got a nice screen behind it and some lighting up top. I'll give it that.
Stunning. It's brand new. It's just amazing. But what really dawned on me this morning is the actual space where we're doing the gala dinner and part of the gala dinner.
Now, this is what they're making fun of. They're like, this looks like a Holiday Inn conference room. Meghan Markle's gone from royal banquets to a Holiday Inn conference room. Now, it's a higher-end conference room.
Before we dive in, I want to set a little bit of context, because I think it helps to understand today's stories better if you understand the broader moment that Harry and Meghan find themselves in right now. We are, depending on how you count it, several years into their post-royal life. Several years since the Oprah interview. Several years since the Netflix docuseries. Several years since Spare. Several years since the Spotify deal collapsed. Since the Archewell Foundation has had its ups and downs, since the lifestyle brand launched, since the jam appeared on shelves, since the retreat concept started being floated. And what's becoming increasingly clear, looking at all of it together, is that the picture is more complicated than either the fan base or the critics tend to acknowledge. The fan base wants to believe that everything is going beautifully, and that any criticism is rooted in racism or jealousy or royalist propaganda. The critics want to believe that everything is a disaster, and that collapse is imminent. The reality, as it almost always is, sits somewhere in the middle and is considerably more interesting than either of those narratives. And today's 3 stories illustrate that middle ground really well. So let's start at the beginning. The first story is about a legal ruling, a significant one, involving Meta and YouTube, and the question of platform liability around harm to children. Now, I want to spend a minute on the actual substance of this case before we get to Harry and Meghan's involvement, because the case itself matters, and I don't want to skim over it just to get to the commentary. For years, there have been lawsuits and legislative battles around the question of whether social media platforms can be held legally responsible for harm caused to minors by their algorithms and their content. This is not a fringe issue. There is substantial peer-reviewed research linking excessive social media use in young people to measurable increases in anxiety, depression, body image issues, self-harm ideation, and social isolation. There are families who have lost children, genuinely lost them, to suicide, to eating disorders, to radicalization, and who trace a direct line between their child's mental health deterioration and their social media use. These are real people, real losses. The advocacy they've done to get these cases into courtrooms has been years in the making. The ruling in question, involving Meta specifically, was seen by advocates as a significant moment, a sign that the legal framework around platform accountability might be shifting. It's been celebrated in those circles as a meaningful step. And again, I want to be clear. The celebration is understandable. These families have been fighting hard for a long time. Now, enter Harry and Meghan. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex issued a public statement responding to the ruling. And on the surface, you might say, fine. They've positioned children's online safety as a cause they care about. Meghan has spoken about it in interviews. Harry has given speeches about it. It's been part of their public advocacy profile for a while now. So issuing a statement on a relevant ruling isn't inherently strange. But the statement itself and the way it was framed is worth examining closely, because the language they used positioned them as participants in this fight in a way that is, to put it charitably, a significant stretch. The statement called the verdict a reckoning. It said they stand with every parent and young person who refused to be silenced. It said the truth has been heard. It was written in the language of solidarity, of shared struggle, of having been in the trenches alongside these families. And here's the problem with that.
Moving on to our final story here. The real reason Meghan Markle is considering a return to acting. She's said to be preparing a turn to acting. Insiders have told Radar it's because the Duchess of Sussex has nowhere else to turn. After a series of stalled media ventures, back deals, she stepped away from Hollywood, as we know, for the Prince. But now there is a growing recognition that the avenues she once relied on are no longer delivering the same opportunities. Projects have fallen away. Deals have changed, and the landscape looks very different.
Harry and Meghan were not in those trenches. They did not file lawsuits. They did not sit in depositions. They did not spend years of their lives building a legal case against one of the most powerful corporations in the world. The families who actually did that work deserve to have that moment belong to them. And when a celebrity couple swoops in with a statement written in the first-person plural, saying, "We stand with you, the truth has been heard," it has the effect, whether intentional or not, of inserting themselves into a story that isn't theirs. And that would be one thing if it existed in isolation. But it doesn't exist in isolation. Because at the exact same time that Harry and Meghan are issuing statements about platforms being built with total disregard for the children they reach, Meghan is actively using her own platform to post images of Archie and Lilibet. Now, and I want to be careful here, because this is genuinely nuanced. Posting photos of your children is not the same as handing your children phones and letting the algorithm shape their development. That's a real distinction. The harm being addressed in these lawsuits is primarily about what social media does to children who are users of these platforms, who are scrolling, who are consuming content, who are being fed algorithms designed to keep them engaged at any emotional cost. Meghan posting a photo of Archie is not the same thing. But here's why the comparison still lands. Because the critique isn't just about direct harm, it's about the broader cultural ecosystem around children and social media. It's about whether we treat children's images, children's presence, children's likeness as content to be deployed for engagement. And Meghan does deploy her children's images for engagement. Every single time there's a new photo, the first glimpse of Archie in a while, a new shot of Lilibet. It generates significant traffic, significant media coverage, significant discussion. It drives people to her platform. It builds her brand. Her children are, functionally, part of her content strategy. Whether or not that causes them direct harm in the way that algorithmic social media can harm a teenager, the optics of championing children's digital protection while using your own children's images as a branding tool is a tension that is absolutely fair to point out. And this is the thing that keeps coming up with Harry and Meghan, across multiple issues, across multiple years. It's not that the causes they champion are wrong. Online safety for children is genuinely important. Mental health advocacy is genuinely important. Press freedom is genuinely important. Privacy is genuinely important. The causes themselves are often legitimate. The issue is the consistency, or the lack of it, between what they advocate for publicly and how they actually operate privately. And when that gap exists, and when it's pointed out, it matters. Because credibility is the currency of advocacy. You can't spend it on one side of your mouth and earn it back on the other. If you're finding this breakdown useful and you want more of this kind of analysis, not just the headlines but the actual substance underneath them, make sure you're subscribed and have the bell turned on, because we do this kind of deep dive regularly and you don't want to be missing episodes. Now, let's move on to the second story, because this one has a genuinely comedic dimension that I want to do justice to, while also being fair about the more substantive questions it raises. Meghan Markle's Best Life Retreat in Australia. Let's talk about it. The concept, as it's been presented, is this: an exclusive, carefully curated gathering of women, hosted in a beautiful location in Australia, centered around a Q&A with Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, focused on empowerment, connection, wellness, and what it means to build a life that is truly yours. It's positioned as intimate. It's positioned as meaningful. It's positioned as a genuinely special experience that not just anyone can attend, because, as we'll get to in a moment, not just anyone can attend. The venue is the Intercontinental Hayman Island. And look, I want to be honest about this. The hotel is genuinely stunning. It's a brand new luxury property on one of the islands off the Queensland coast. The kind of place that looks like a screensaver. Crystal water, tropical surroundings, the whole thing. If you're going to host an event, this is a very credible choice of location. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the hotel itself. That part of the pitch holds up. The ticket price for the retreat is approximately $3,000. Now, $3,000 for a luxury retreat is not automatically outrageous. High-end wellness retreats charge this and more. Tony Robbins events charge this and more. Speaking engagements, exclusive workshops, curated experiences with public figures. The market for premium-priced access to that kind of thing is real, and it's large. So in isolation, the price point isn't necessarily the issue. But then the photos and videos of the actual event space started circulating. And specifically, the room where the gala dinner and the Q&A with Meghan were scheduled to take place. And the room, was a conference room. A hotel conference room. With a screen at one end and some lights set up, and the kind of banquet tables and chairs that you see at literally every corporate event in every business hotel on Earth. And the room was not large. We're talking about a space that, based on the footage that circulated, holds maybe 100 people at an absolute stretch. In a generous arrangement, probably closer to 60 to 80. Now the internet, as the internet does, immediately had a field day. The comparisons that started circulating included things like this looks like a Holiday Inn real estate seminar. The atmosphere is giving assisted living facility dining room. My company's quarterly all hands has better production value than this. And my personal favorite category. The earnest defenders of the event posting their own footage while inadvertently making the critics point for them by showing just how small and generic the room actually was. And here's where it gets a little more interesting than just dunking on the decor. Because the organizer, whoever is running the logistics of this retreat, released some information about how the event was structured, and what they described was something that sounded genuinely sweet in isolation, but becomes kind of fascinating in the context of everything else. They talked about how many of the women attending had come alone. How many of them had openly said they were coming because they wanted to meet new friends. How the organizers were essentially doing a seating chart based on trying to match compatible personalities. Their words were that it felt almost like setting up blind dates, trying to pair people who might click. And I want to sit with that for a second, because what is being described is, essentially, a social club for women who are lonely and looking for connection, and are willing to pay $3,000 to be in a room with Meghan Markle in the hope of finding their people. And look, loneliness is real. The desire for meaningful connection is real. The market for structured social experiences for adult women is real and growing. I'm not mocking the need. But the gap between that reality, women paying to potentially make friends in a small hotel conference room, and the polished, aspirational lifestyle brand presentation of the event as some kind of transformational elite gathering is pretty wide. And that gap is exactly what people are pointing at when they laugh. There's also the question of the vetting process. Because you couldn't just buy a ticket. You had to apply. You had to write, in your own words, why you wanted to attend and why you should be selected. People went through this process, got rejected or accepted, and then those who were accepted were able to invite one friend. The whole thing was curated, filtered, controlled. Now, one obvious practical reason for that level of control is security. Meghan doesn't want someone in that room who's going to cause a scene, record something unflattering, or use their access in a way that creates problems. That's understandable. But it also means that the organizer knew exactly who was in that room. Every single person had been screened. Every single person was a known Meghan supporter or at minimum a neutral party, which means the Q&A was never going to be particularly challenging. It was never going to be anything other than supportive. The environment was controlled not just physically, but emotionally and ideologically. And tickets were, apparently, still available close to the event date. Which, given the small size of the venue, tells you something about the demand versus what was implied by the application and selection process. If the room holds 80 people and tickets are still available 2 weeks out, the vetting wasn't exactly turning away thousands of desperate applicants. The exclusivity, like a lot of things with this particular brand, may have been somewhat manufactured. We will be following up on this one when the retreat actually happens, so make sure you come back for that. It's going to be interesting to see how the coverage looks once it's done, whether the attendees feel it was worth it, whether Meghan's Q&A delivers anything substantive, whether the whole thing quietly disappears from the conversation or becomes a bigger story. Either way, we'll be here. All right, now let's get into the third story, and I want to give this one the most time because I think it's actually the most consequential of the three, even if it's the most speculative. Reports have been circulating, primarily from Radar Online with unnamed industry insiders, that Meghan Markle is seriously exploring a return to acting. Now, before I get into the analysis, let me just acknowledge the sourcing situation. Radar Online is a tabloid. Unnamed insiders are unnamed insiders. This could be accurate reporting from people with genuine knowledge of Meghan's situation. It could be speculation dressed up as insider information. It could be a trial balloon floated by her own team to gauge public reaction. Any of those things are possible. So take the specifics with appropriate skepticism. But here's why the story is worth taking seriously, even with that caveat. It fits. It fits with what we can actually observe from the outside about where the Sussex brand stands right now. And I want to walk through that, because I think it's genuinely illuminating. When Harry and Meghan left the royal family and landed in California, the plan, as best as anyone could piece together from what followed, seemed to be this: build a media and content empire that would be financially self-sustaining and culturally influential in its own right. The Netflix deal, reportedly worth somewhere around $100 million, was the centerpiece. The Spotify deal, worth around $18 million for an exclusive podcast, was part of it. The book deal for Spare, the Archewell Foundation. And then the lifestyle brand layer, the wellness content, the cooking, the jam, the retreat, all of it pointing towards something like a Gwyneth Paltrow model of celebrity turned curator of aspirational living. That was the architecture. And some pieces of it have worked. The Netflix deal produced the docu-series, which got significant viewership. Harry's book was a bestseller. The lifestyle brand has gotten off the ground in some form. These are not nothing. But some significant pieces have not worked the way they were supposed to. The Spotify deal collapsed entirely. Spotify and Archewell parted ways without producing the kind of content that justified that investment, and the departure was notable enough that it got covered widely as a significant setback. The follow-up Netflix content has been less impactful than the docu-series. The projects that were announced, the animated series, various development deals, have either changed significantly or gone quiet. The media landscape itself has shifted, with streaming services pulling back on spending and greenlighting far fewer projects than they were at the peak of the streaming wars. And so, if you are Meghan, and you are looking at this landscape, and you are trying to figure out where you go from here, acting starts to look like the most reliable foundation you have. It's the thing she did before any of this. It's the thing where she has an actual body of work, 7 seasons of Suits, a recognizable character, an audience that liked her before she became the Duchess of Sussex, before she became a polarizing public figure, before all of the noise. That version of Meghan, Rachel Zane, the smart, ambitious lawyer navigating a world she had to fight to be taken seriously in, that version connected with people. That version had genuine fans who had nothing to do with the royal family. The insider quote that keeps circulating says something like, "Acting is the one area where she has proven success and credibility, and it feels like the most viable path forward." And I think that's probably true, with some significant caveats. The first caveat is the state of the industry, which I touched on briefly but want to go deeper on. The Hollywood of 2018, when Meghan left Suits to marry Prince Harry, and the Hollywood of today are genuinely different places. The streaming boom created an enormous appetite for content, which meant more shows, more roles, more opportunities for working actors at every level of the industry. That boom has substantially contracted. The major streaming platforms, Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon, Disney+, Peacock, all went through significant spending pullbacks in the past couple of years. They're being more selective. Budgets are tighter. Fewer shows are getting made, and the ones that are getting made are being cast with a very different calculus than they were 5 years ago. What that means practically is that the working actors who built solid careers during the boom, people who were getting recurring roles, series regular spots on mid-tier shows, good supporting work, are having a much harder time finding consistent work. And above them, the A-list film actors who used to stay in the prestige film world are increasingly coming into television because the film world has its own problems. So you've got more competition at the top of the market, a shrinking middle, and Meghan trying to re-enter at a point where her skills and her name recognition are genuinely from a different era of the industry. The second caveat is the polarization question, and this one is probably the most complicated. Meghan Markle is one of the most discussed and divisive public figures in the English-speaking world. You cannot have a casual conversation about her. There is no neutral ground. People who love her fiercely. People who dislike her fiercely. And for a production that wants to cast her, that polarization is a genuine strategic question. On the positive side, the attention she would bring is undeniable. A show that cast Meghan in a lead role would generate an extraordinary amount of press coverage before a single frame was shot. Trailers would go viral. The premiere would be a major cultural event. Curiosity, both from fans and from people who dislike her but would watch just to have an opinion, would drive early viewership numbers in a way that very few casting choices could match. On the negative side, Every piece of promotional press she would do for that show would become an interrogation about the royal family, about Harry, about their children, about the memoir, about the Netflix docuseries, about the retreat, about the jam, about whatever the current news cycle was. The show itself could get completely buried under the noise of her personal narrative. And some of the audience that would tune in specifically because of the controversy might not be the audience that sustains a show through multiple seasons. They might watch the first episode, form their opinion, and leave. There's also the question of what she could actually get cast in that would make sense. She's not an action star. She's not a comedian. She's a dramatic actress who was good at playing a certain kind of character, intelligent, emotionally complex, navigating institutional power dynamics, and who has been out of the craft for several years. The muscle memory is there, presumably, but so is the rust. And the first project back would need to be something that gave her room to find her footing without immediately exposing the gap between who she was on screen 7 years ago and who she is now. Now, Eric Roberts came out publicly to say he believes in this comeback. He said she'll blow everyone's mind. His wife and manager Eliza echoed the sentiment, saying it's time, that her family will support it, that she's amazing. And I want to be fair to Eric Roberts here. This is a man who has had a long career, who was on Suits with Meghan, who knows her from a professional context, and who is speaking from a place of genuine personal affection and belief. That's real. He's not a publicist reading a statement. He knew her. He worked with her. His faith in her is presumably sincere. But also, Eric Roberts is not a producer, not a showrunner, not a network executive. He's an actor. And being a working actor who has known someone from a previous professional context doesn't give you particular insight into whether the industry will receive them well upon a return. The belief is kind. It doesn't move the needle on the actual practical questions. What does move the needle? And this is what I keep coming back to, is the question of who, specifically, would offer her a role. Not in theory, in practice. Which showrunner is excited about this? Which network or streamer sees this as something that serves their business? Which creative team has a project that genuinely benefits from Meghan Markle in the lead, rather than just generating a news cycle for a week and then becoming a liability? That's the question that matters, and the answer to it is not in any of these reports, because nobody knows the answer yet. It's speculative, it's possibility, it's not reality. And I think that's actually the most honest way to summarize where Meghan is right now, across all three of today's stories. She is in a space of possibility and speculation. The retreat is a possibility. The acting comeback is a possibility. The social media advocacy is a possibility of a different kind of influence and relevance. None of it has landed yet in the definitive "this is what she is now" way that her team has clearly been trying to engineer for years. And the fascinating thing, the genuinely fascinating thing, is that this is a person with extraordinary resources, a global profile, a husband who is equally famous, access to the highest levels of entertainment and media and philanthropy, and yet the question of what she is actually for, what her brand actually means, what the Sussex project actually is, that question remains remarkably open. More open than it probably should be, this many years in. Whether that changes in the next 12 months, whether the acting comeback happens, whether the lifestyle brand crystallizes into something coherent, whether the advocacy work develops enough substance to be taken seriously on its own terms. That's what we're watching. And honestly, it's one of the more interesting ongoing stories in popular culture right now, precisely because the outcome is genuinely uncertain. Drop a comment below and let me know where you think this goes. Does Meghan get cast in something significant? Does the retreat become a real thing or quietly disappear? Does the gap between the advocacy and the behavior ever get addressed? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know what you think, especially if you disagree with my take. That's what makes these conversations worth having. If you've made it this far, thank you, genuinely. These videos take real time to put together, and knowing that people are watching all the way to the end means a lot. If you got something out of today, hit the like button. It makes a real difference in how many people the algorithm shows this to. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. We have a lot more coming, including the follow-up on the Australia retreat once it actually happens. You don't want to miss that one. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and I'll see you in the next video.